Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2018 Air Force Association Journal E.W. Rawlings Chapter Annual Awards Dinner. I am Jeff Johnson, Chapter President and your Master of Ceremonies for tonight. If you haven't already done so, please silence your cell phones until the banquet is adjourned. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the presentation of the colors by the University of St. Thomas Air Force ROTC Detachment 410 and the singing of the National Anthem by the Detachment 410 Choir.
Stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight. For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. State us that star-spangled banner yet wave, for the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Thank you, cadets. Well done. Please be seated for the Prisoner of War Missing in Action ceremony performed by the University of St. Thomas Air Force ROTC Detachment 410.
Good evening. The small table in the place of honor is set for one. It is our way of symbolizing the fact that members of our profession of arms are missing from our midst. They are commonly called POW and MIA. We call them brothers. They are unable to be with us this evening, and so we remember them because of their incarceration. The table is set for one, symbolizing the frailty of one prisoner alone against his aggressors. Remember, the tablecloth is white, symbolizing the purity of their intentions to respond to their country's call to arms. Remember, the single rose displayed in a vase reminds us of the families and loved ones of our comrades in arms who keep the faith awaiting their return. Remember, the yellow ribbon, tied so prominently to the vase, is reminiscent of the yellow ribbon worn on the lapel and breasts of those who bear witness to the unyielding determination to demand a proper accounting of our missing. Remember, a slice of lemon is on the bread plate to remind us of their bitter fate. remember. There is salt upon the bread plate, symbolic of the family's tears as they wait. Remember. The candle is reminiscent of the light of hope that lives in our hearts to illuminate their way home, away from their captives, to the open arms of a grateful nation. Remember. The glass is inverted. They cannot toast us this night. Remember. Remember all of you who served with them and called them comrades, who depended upon their might and aid and relied upon them, for surely they have not forsaken you. Let us pray to the Supreme Commander that all of our comrades will soon be back within our ranks. Let us remember and never forget their sacrifices. May God forever watch over them and protect them and their families. Thank you.
We are honored that you have joined us this evening. The purpose of this banquet is to recognize outstanding performers from our Air Force community, which includes Reserve, Guard, ROTC, Junior ROTC, Civil Air Patrol, and local educators. To all of our awardees, thank you for what you have done. We will recognize each of you individually later in the program, but you are why we are here tonight. Let me take a moment to briefly explain more about the Rawlings chapter of the Air Force Association and what we do. The Rawlings chapter has approximately 700 members in the Twin Cities and Greater Minnesota. Nationally, the Air Force Association is 94,000 members strong with over 200 local chapters. The Air Force Association represents the interests of the Air Force and its airmen with a mission to educate, advocate, and support on behalf of the Air Force. So what does this mean? It means we educate the public on the importance of maintaining a strong Air Force. It means we advocate for Air Force policies, programs, and priorities. We support the families of our airmen, and particularly the families of veterans, the deployed, and wounded. And lastly, we work to promote science, technology, engineering, and math studies to prepare students for future careers. Our success is helped by longtime community sponsors and partners as listed on the last page of the program. We give a special thanks to our local Hubbard Broadcasting, for which this event would not be possible without their generous support. Community partners are instrumental to our chapter's success, so thank you for your support. I would like to take a few minutes to welcome some special guests that have joined us this evening. Please stand as I call your name. The Honorable Tina Smith, United States Senator for Minnesota. Minnesota Air National Guard Chief of Staff, Brigadier General Sandy Best. Minnesota Air National Guard Command Chief, Chief Master Sergeant Paul Kessler. Nine 934th Airlift Wing Commander, Colonel Anthony Polishek. 934th Airlift Wing Vice Commander, Colonel Tim Womuth. 934th Airlift Wing Command Chief, Chief Master Sergeant Anthony Mack. 133rd Airlift Wing Commander, Colonel Daniel Gabrelli. 133rd Airlift Wing Command Chief, Chief Master Sergeant Lance Berg. University of Minnesota-Duluth, Air Force ROTC Detachment 420, Commander and AFA's Richard Bong Chapter President, Lieutenant Colonel Brian Grady. University of St. Thomas Air Force ROTC Detachment 410, Commander Lieutenant Colonel Mark Mattis. University of Minnesota Air Force ROTC Detachment 415, Commander Lieutenant Colonel Chris Hughes. Principal of Farnsworth Aerospace School, Mr. Hamilton Bell. Air Force Association Vice Chairman of the Board, Field Operations, Mr. Mac McAvoy. Commissioner of the Air Force Association's Cyber Patriot Program and tonight's keynote speaker, Mr. Bernie Scotch. North Central Regional President for the Air Force Association, Mr. Larry Stagstatter. Minnesota State President for the Air Force Association, Mr. Dan Murphy. South Dakota State President for the Air Force Association, Mr. Ron Milkey. There's probably about 20 more names I could read as well, but I think we'll call it good there. So thank you all for being here with us tonight. At this time, I'd like to ask the Honorable Tina Smith to please come forward for some remarks.
Well, good evening, everybody. I now can rest assured that while I can see you, you may have a little trouble seeing me with that. We'll call this a beautiful Minnesota spring evening that greets us, and rightly so. Thank you very much, Jeff, and I just want to thank the Air Force Association for inviting me to be with you today, and especially for all of your work on STEM, on education, and for your support for our military and for our veterans and for their families. And it is a great pleasure for me to be with you tonight. We gather tonight to recognize and celebrate service. And I, as Minnesota's United States Senator, your newest United States Senator, want to just acknowledge our proud tradition of service dating to the Civil War. You know, at the outbreak of the Civil War, Minnesota was the newest state in the Union, and we had a population of about 180,000 people. And we were among the first to send volunteer troops to our nation's defense. The 24,000 young Minnesotans of Minnesota's First, who answered the call of their nation, they left behind their families and friends and civilian lives to serve our country. A Minnesota author, Richard Moe, wrote that the soldiers of the 1st Minnesota were, and as he said, ordinary young men who were called upon to do extraordinary things. And Minnesota's 1st did extraordinary things. They made extraordinary sacrifices also at the Battle of Gettysburg, where they lost nearly 80% of their number. These Civil War soldiers began a proud tradition in Minnesota. And in the 153 years since then, thousands more Minnesotans have answered the call of our nation, serving with great courage and honor. Minnesota, of course, served in World War I, World War II, the Korean conflict, Vietnam, Afghanistan, Iraq, and countless deployments throughout the world, including the Ebola outbreak. And since the Civil War, roughly 13% of all Minnesotans have served our state, and our state has consistently contributed greater than our number to our nation's defense, really out of proportion of our relatively small population. So tonight, we all come together to honor this tradition of citizen soldiers. And I would like to use my home state senator's prerogative to, in particular, honor Brigadier General Sandra Best, whom you are also recognizing tonight. Brigadier General Best joined the Minnesota Air National Guard's 133rd Airlift Wing in 1984 as a personnel specialist. And through hard work and dedication, she rose through the enlisted ranks, became a commissioned officer in 1991, and eventually rose to become the first female general in the Minnesota National Guard when she was promoted to Brigadier General in February of 2016. And I was there, and it was really exciting. Since her promotion, Brigadier General Best has served as the Chief of Staff for Minnesota's Air National Guard and is in charge of overseeing all aspects of the 133rd Airlift Wing in the Twin Cities and the 148th Fighter Wing in Duluth. And as I know her well, she has been a tireless advocate, and she brings such intelligence and optimism and spirit to her role, all qualities that have helped make her so successful. And to those of you, all of you, both young men, but especially the young women who are considering where your path might lead you, I offer up to you my friend Sandy as a role model to us all. So congratulations tonight on this recognition, General Best. And if you'll allow me, I would also like to recognize your keynote speaker, Brigadier General Scotch, who has been a proudly served this country for many years. I was just talking with General Scotch about the work that he has done with the cyber defense competition, right? Cyber Patriot competition, which is an outstanding example about how to engage young men and women in the not only the idea of service, but also the idea of how critical STEM is, not only to our military, but also to our country. And I was very interested to hear about your work, and I'm honored to have a chance to be here with you today. You are doing incredibly good work, and I understand we have 33 Minnesota high school and middle school teams participating, and maybe someday we'll have hundreds more, which would be fantastic. So I want to just please tell you how happy I am to be here. I want to congratulate all of you for your recognition tonight on your outstanding achievements and your commitment to our great nation. I hope you have a wonderful banquet, and thank you so much for inviting me to help share this celebration. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Smith, for joining us this evening. Chaplain Don Makita, who has served in the Civil Air Patrol for over, I now hear, 39 years, will now give tonight's invocation. Chaplain?
Let us pray. Our God and our Father, we thank you for the day that you've given us, the opportunities that we can assemble this evening and sit around the table and fellowship and talk about the great things that have been accomplished through the work of so many individuals here this evening. Father, we do pray your blessings upon them as they are recognized. Might we exalt you for the grace that you've given us that we might serve. Help us, Father, to understand the importance of service in our life. We ask now your blessings upon this food, and we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain. And dinner should now be served. Thank you. Enjoy your meal. Brigadier Joe. General Scotch has more than 20 years of experience in leadership positions, developing, managing, and implementing communications and information systems for the United States Air Force, as well as the Defense Information Systems Agency. Within the Air Force, he has served as Director of Mission Systems, Director of Communications Operations, and Director of Chief Information Officer Support. As National Commissioner of Cyber Patriot, General Scotch oversees the planning and implementation of Cyber Patriot and provides leadership and support for the program's development. In this role, General Scotch is able to further student interests in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, as well as increase their awareness of cybersecurity threats. Please join me in welcoming Bernie Scotch.
I'm disappointed that the drapes came down. I know that you all weren't, but I was hoping to give a truly brilliant presentation tonight, and that's been taken away from me. Far too much is made of my bio. Those of you who are general officers in one form or another will know that this is true. I still remember the day that I was told I was going to be a general, and my boss called me in and said, Bernie, great news, the list is coming out tomorrow. The Senate's confirmed you're going to be a brigadier general. go home and enjoy the time with Debbie. And I said, well, why me? And he said, well, because you're a model colonel. I said, well, thank you, sir. So I scurried home to Debbie and I said, Debbie, great news, I'm going to be a general. She said, why you? And I said, well, because I'm a model colonel. She said, ah, I see. She returned a few minutes later with the dictionary and she had the word model circled and it says model, noun, miniature replica of the real thing. So that's what it is. I am so pleased to be here in the Twin Cities. And one of the privileges I have is being a backup speaker when you can't get the A-team. And of course that's General Larry Spencer, our most recent Vice Chief of Staff, who's now the President of AFA. And he very much wanted to be here. Interestingly, tomorrow evening he's in Washington, D.C. receiving an award for STEM programs that AFA has been providing, and in particular for our outreach to females and to minority students. And I'll say a little bit about that in a minute. But I thought it might be useful to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in Washington, D.C. And I know sometimes the farther you get from it, the clearer the air is and the more relaxed the atmosphere is, but you don't always get the ground truth. And these views are entirely mine, but I thought you might be interested in knowing some of the things that we're tracking very closely at AFA National. One is, of course, we just received a $1.3 trillion omnibus appropriation, and that's good news. We'll be seeing 56 more F-35s. We'll be seeing some re-engining of the B-52s, the TF-33 engines that have gotten a few years on them. Interestingly, they'll be flying until the year 2040 now, if you can imagine that. That's a good news story and a bad news story. And we'll be re-winging the A-10. $3.4 billion in facilities, sustainment and modernization. That's good news. And probably the best news of all is that our active force is getting a 2.4% pay raise, and that's well needed, and we're grateful for that. Other news is we are talking a great deal now of a pilot shortage, and it's a little harrowing if you consider the implications of what's happening. If you look at the numbers very carefully, and as an aviator myself, I love to slip the surly bonds, but we're not retaining them once we get them in the Air Force. It's more of a pilot retention problem than it is a pilot accession problem. And if you do some math, in the next 10 years, 42% of the commercial pilots in the United States will reach mandatory retirement age. Now, they need about 5,000 pilots a year for the next 20 years. Think about that. The military produces 2,500 pilots a year. So your math is as good as my math. In a short 20 years, there will be a 50,000 pilot shortage if the trends continue. Now, clearly, other things are being done. You may find yourself very often on a commercial flight, a Part 121 carrier. You're seeing some foreign nationals for major carriers in the United States. But you will be hearing more about this. One of the issues that we have been scratching at for a long time, and those of you who've served on active duty and particularly in rated positions, you know that we don't do a good job of getting good gender diversity and good minority diversity within the pilot corps. And we're working hard to address that. The Chief of Staff and Secretary Wilson are very focused on it, and we think that there's a way ahead. Another interesting development in D.C., of course, is this whole discussion of space. Our Commander-in-Chief announced at Miramar on March 13th that space is a warfighting domain. That might have gotten past you, but those of you who worked in space realize that is a very profound statement for a Commander-in-Chief to make. He also mentioned maybe we need a space force, and then he later said, well, I was just kidding, and then he thought, well, you know, maybe I'm not kidding. And so we find ourselves right now with a lot of serious discussion on whether we've got 3 military departments, Army, Navy, and the Air Force. Of course, the Marine Corps falls under the Department of the Navy, and maybe we need a space force. I think I'm representing the Air Force position, but again, speaking only for myself, a significant logical case can be made. We can do all that. We do space very well in the United States Air Force. Every one of you who's got a phone that accesses GPS that comes from your United States Air Force. We know how to do space, so do we really want to create another military department in the United States? And that is at a level far higher than us, but it will be interesting to watch. And then finally, we are hearing a lot of discussion from the Chief of Staff. One of the duties I have as assigned, and you know what that means, is I have the privilege of putting together our major conferences for the Air Force Association, and we're building up to the Airspace and Cyber Conference, and we were asked by the Chief of Staff if we couldn't kind of theme it along the line of multi-domain operations, air, space, cyber, ground, air, subterranean, and everything else. So you will be hearing a lot more discussion of multi-domain operations, I think, out of our senior leadership in the Air Force. And then finally, we're struggling with what we are as an Air Force. And I mean that coyly, of course. But the Marines do a great job of articulating Marine Expeditionary Units and what a MU is, and most of the American public understand it. Certainly that's understood on the Hill. The Navy has now been talking very eloquently about we need a 355-ship Navy, 355 ships. Well, I'm sure Senator Smith and Senator McCain and the rest of the Hill would tell you, I understand what that means. And the Army advocates very strongly, we need a set number of Army divisions, and people have a pretty good comprehension on the Hill and otherwise what a division is. But what are we? And for many years we've been arguing that, well, we need a certain number of fighter wings. And now we're realizing, well, maybe that's not relevant to everything we do. And it's not to take anything away from tactical air and fighter wings, which are a critical part of the force that we provide. But what about airlift? What about space? What about cyber? What about all the other mission areas? So I think you may be hearing some more specific articulation of how we measure it. And those of you know that we've talked about expeditionary forces and AEFs and all that stuff. So I think you can expect a little bit of discussion on that. So that's the menu of things that I think are most widely talked about relative to your United States Air Force in DC. But I'd like to talk also about this thing that we call a budget process. And does anyone care to guess when the last time is that we had a clean budget in the Department of Defense? And by that I mean one that was appropriated and enacted in time. And the answer, of course, is the last time that happened was 2010, 8 years ago. So while we rejoice at a $1.3 trillion omnibus appropriation bill, it makes it very difficult for your Air Force to organize, train, and equip when we can't do the kind of planning that we need to be doing for force sustainment and modernization. And my new friend Paul Wagner and I were sitting here visiting, talking about the processes we use in the Department of Defense, and it's difficult to plan. So I think we need to put a little pressure on those that we can, and I wish Senator Smith was here, because I tell her, and I'm going to be seeing her soon, we need some help. And we need to make sure that our reserve component is fully funded, and we need to make sure that the National Guard under Title 32 is adequately funded at the state and at the federal level under Title 10. And we need to make sure, of course, that the active force in both air and space, and of course in cyber as well, is funded. We can't do our mission if we don't know what resources we have. And the sequestration lingers on. It's certainly not the law of the land right now, but the effects of that are being still felt, and we need to support and defend as we have been charged to do. Now, I have, and I hope you didn't waste your time on my biography, and I apologize for that long introduction. It was very kind. But something that we are tracking very closely, and something the Air Force Association is engaged very tightly on, is cyber issues. You may or may not know that our government spent in 2016 $20 billion on cyber defense. That's a lot of our budget. There are 5,000 attacks per hour on U.S. systems. There are 4,000 ransomware attacks, and I assume you're familiar with that concept, where someone grabs your stuff and says, if you want it back, you got to pay me ransom. 4,000 of those every day. That's an issue. But this ties into what we are as an Air Force Association in one little program that's part of the greater AFA, and I'm so glad that my friend Mac McAloon is here, because he works with our field organizations everywhere and does a brilliant job. But this Cyber Patriot program addresses a very urgent national need. There are 1 million unfilled cyber jobs in the world today. 1 million. It is an area with negative unemployment. And we have seen some wonderful episodes of students who've gone through AFA's program, the Cyber Patriot program. The only people that come out angry are their teachers, who realize that as high school graduates they're making more money than their teachers are. We started this in 2009 with a modest pilot program of 8 teams, all in the state of Florida. And this year we registered 5,584 teams in all 50 states and Canada and the United Kingdom and Department of Defense schools elsewhere. But you see this confluence. We are advocating, we are educating, we're supporting, we're doing the mission of the Air Force Association, and we're generating this new workforce of cyber talent that the nation so desperately needs. So you students who are involved in Cyber Patriot, you educators and concerned parents and citizens, we think we're onto something special. Most American kids go into STEM fields when they leave high school at a rate of about 18%. Cyber Patriot graduates go at a rate of about 88%. Most American kids go to four-year institutions at a rate of about 40%. Cyber Patriot students go to four-year institutions at a rate of about 90%. And what's most significantly, we're smart enough to know that causation and correlation are two very different things. 90% of the students tell us they're doing this because they were involved in AFA's Premier STEM program. So we're doing well. And I've got to give a shout out to the coaches, to the leaders, to the students, and to our sponsors who make it all possible. The Northrop Grumman Foundation gives us about $1.9 million a year to run this program, but then there's a long list of other companies like AT&T and Cisco and Microsoft and some small businesses as well. So I think we're onto something very special. Each one of us knows in this room the largest economy in the world is, of course, the United States, and we're at about $19 trillion. China's close behind at about $12 trillion, and then you get into UK and France and Germany, $7, $8 trillion GDP. What a lot of people don't realize, though, is in the industrialized world, we are the most efficient economy in terms of gross domestic product per hour worked of an American worker. And by that I mean if you add up all the goods and services that Americans produce, and you divide it by the number of hours that it took to produce it, we do not have a close peer among the major nations. I would offer it to you, it's because we carry cell phones. I would offer it to you because we do cool stuff on our iPhones. I would offer it to you because we're IT enabled. But there's a problem. The recent PISA, the student assessment, the international student assessment of their performance, put the United States about 40th in math among 15-year-olds. We're 28th in science. We're 20th in the number of 24-year-olds that get degrees in natural science and engineering. Well, it's my opinion that those facts can't coexist at the same time in the same space. And you can't be a world-leading economy if our 15-year-olds aren't excited about science, technology, engineering, and math. So please help us. And it's more than just Cyber Patriot. It's a national issue that we need to deal with. And I can fill your eyes and ears with stories of students. And I can tell you about Richard out at the Los Angeles, and I'm tearing up. I reached the age where I cry at Walmart grand opening, so it doesn't take much. But Richard had never left Watts in his entire life. And I mean that literally. He was born in a hospital at Watts. He did his shopping with his grandmother, and he went to school, and he had never gone beyond the Santa Monica Freeway. And Richard saw this poster for AFA's Cyber Patriot program in his home room, and he said, I want to do that. Well, he came to the national finals competition a few years ago carrying a tattered suitcase. Of course, he'd never been on an airplane in his life, but AFA flies these teams, all expense paid, and we'll be doing it here in another 10 days or so in Baltimore. And his head was swiveling like a height-finding radar as he looked around this beautiful facility. Well, I'm pleased to tell you that he's now a cybersecurity engineer for Lockheed Martin. Now, that's anecdotal, but the anecdotes go on and on and on. And it's because of this partnership that we've developed here, this thing that we call AFA, where we bring my new friend Paul, and we bring the other sponsors that you see listed. We can't do this alone. And there's something very magic and very special about what we're trying to do. Now, I will offer to you that I think the biggest challenge we face, and this is us here in this room, is maintaining contact with America. Because in World War II, there were 12 million people in uniform, and we're less than 1/10 of that now. Think about the implications of that. Only 7.3% of Americans are veterans. And that means, of course, that 93% aren't. Think about the implications of that. And think about this. In the range of 17 to 24 years old, there are about 34 million people. And these are the prime ages where we want to attract them to the military, to military service, and to become part of this community. 71% of those people, of 17 to 24-year-olds, are ineligible for military service for physical, criminal, substance abuse, emotional, or other reasons. Now, you don't have to scratch your head real hard to realize the implications of that and why this becomes even more important. This isn't a recruiting effort, but I will tell you we need to bring industry, we need to bring the military, we need to bring communities, we need to bring political leaders together to do the things that we need to do as a nation. Now, my sense is that AFA is doing well. And our chapter president read that we're 94,000. I'm happy to tell you that last year was the first year in many years that we actually grew in membership. I can tell you, those of you that are close members of AFA for years, you know, we watched our corpus, the money we had in the bank kind of dwindle. We had a balanced budget this year, and we're going to have another balanced budget that year. That tells you that the organization is doing well. But it's doing well because of the things that are going on in Minneapolis and St. Paul. I was at Minot Air Force Base yesterday, and as someone pointed out, whether it's Larry or someone else, you're not at the end of the world, but you can see it from the flight line at Minot. But a very similar event. And I approached an Airman Simmons before, and I could play you the tape of last night, and it would look very much like this group here. And I just walked up to him. He was a two-striper, just a wonderful young man from Baltimore, Maryland. And I said, so why'd you join the Air Force? And he said something that moved me. He said, because I want to be part of something bigger than myself. Now, for someone who's probably 20 years old, that's impressive. And it's impressive in a way that tells me that our Air Force is in great shape, both with the active force, the guard force, the reserve force, and of course Civil Air Patrol is now part of the total force, and those who are in training. We're in good shape. We dwell a lot on the negatives, and we think the world is going to that place in a handbasket. But if you look at any major statistic, crime, nutrition, longevity, you know, people in 1900 lived to a ripe age of 42 years old. And think about that. And now that's roughly doubled at about 79 years old. Things are going okay. And things are going okay as a nation because we have institutions like our reserve forces, like our guard forces, like our citizen soldiers, like our regular Air Force. And they come together in institutions like this. We need you to be part of that. Now, if I be so bold as to give any advice, I would tell you this. My wife and I are experts on children. We have 6 children, and my biography is wrong because they keep coming out. And number 20 grandchild will be born next month. And yeah, indeed. They come over, they all live in Northwest Arkansas where we live. And so they come over every Sunday, and there's 50 people in the house, and we rejoice. They go home about 9:30, we rejoice even more. But the point is that we need to take responsibility for what this nation is. 7.3% of the people understand what it's really like to serve in uniform. That's not a big number, and that puts a burden on us. So I would encourage every one of us to stay engaged. And by that, I mean stay informed. I'm an information technology geek, and I don't apologize for that, but I have been fascinated by the explosion of networks and the explosion of news networks. And unfortunately, what that does is it allows people to go and listen to an echo chamber of what they already are preconceived to believe. And if you want this spectrum view, you go to that channel. And if you want that spectrum view, you go to that channel, and you get reinforced. Well, I would encourage us all to be a little more broad thinking than that. And I suffer through those networks most every night, and I try and get a broad interest. And I'm not holding myself up as an example of how to do it, but I would offer that I worry that we are being tunneled into specific little channels, and we just believe there's this and there's that, and I'm with this, and so you're with that, so I'm good and you're bad. I think that's unhealthy. And of course, we all need to vote, and we need to encourage others to vote. But equally important to that, and if Senator Smith were here, I'd tell her this as well, we need to hold our elected officials responsible. This is a constitutional democracy, and it's a republic, and the people are sitting at the top of it, and we need to hold the people beneath us, those whom we elect, responsible for the things that we need to do. Our defense budget is about 3.2%. You might be interested to know that in Russia it's 5.4% of GDP. We have some serious challenges in front of us. And then second, in addition to staying engaged, I encourage us all to be teachers. And that's why I'm so thrilled to see the ROTC cadets here and the junior ROTC cadets and Civil Air Patrol cadets and leaders. That's where it starts. But let me offer, it also ends up on the knee as your grandchild's bouncing on your knee on Sunday afternoon, and impose values on them. Teach them values and teach them what a special place we are privileged to live in. And that's the last thing I would offer as my counsel. We ought to be thankful. And I won't give a religious speech, that's inappropriate here, but I will tell you, whatever you worship, give it great thanks that you were born at a time that is a wonderful time, that you were born in a nation that's a wonderful nation, and that we all will work hard together to keep it that way. God bless you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, General Scotch. So before we begin tonight's awards presentation, we have two very special recognition events. So General Scotch, I know you're just about to sit down and enjoy your dessert, but will you please come forward again, along with Major Mary Albright from the Civil Air Patrol.
I was asked to share a few words about some of the things that we're doing here at the Anoka Squadron. Cyber Patriot as Anoka has been consistently high performing for 5 straight years. 3 years we were privileged to achieve the platinum level and 2 years at the gold. For Cyber Patriot 10 this year, we were the first place gold tier all service team in the state of Minnesota. And we reached the gold tier semifinals. Would the following team members please come forward? Cadet Captain Iva Hammett, Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Yelazar Dergichev, Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Alex Clark, and Cadet Technical Sergeant William Walker. We also had our first year in the Stellar Explorers, another Air Force Association competition. Our squadron is called the Phoenix Squadron, and even though we were a first-year team in Stellar X, we've been the only team, we were the only team in the state of Minnesota and the North Central region of the Civil Air Patrol this year. And we were all shocked when we qualified for the national semifinals this year. And we ended the competition as a top 20 national team. And next year we're going to make it to national, so. All 4 of our team members plan to return for next year's competition, and they've already set that goal to make national finals. Will the following team members please come forward? Mr. Derrick, step back up here. Master Sergeant Jordan Norwood, and Cadet Technical Sergeant Kyle Witt.
Well, General Scotch, we're going to let you sit down for maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Okay, yeah, just enough time for dessert. For our second recognition event this evening, will Chief Master Sergeant Tukalski from the 133rd Air Wing please come forward?
The Air Force Enlisted Heritage Hall's Wall of Achievers at Maxwell Air Force Base features more than 160 aviation and Air Force enlisted members who achieved high ranks, commissioning, or celebrity status. Some members portrayed on the wall are actors, others are general officers, and one went on to be the President of the United States, George W. Bush. Many of the names might be familiar to you: Walter Matthau, Clark Gable, Gene Autry, Charlton Heston, and again, President George W. Bush. Tonight we have the honor of introducing Brigadier General Sandy Best as the newest member of the Air Force Enlisted Heritage Hall's Wall of Achievers. In order to be honored on the Wall of Achievers, men and women must have served honorably as an enlisted airman in the United States Air Force, attain an enlisted Air Force specialty code, and earn a 3 skill level in that Air Force specialty code. General Best did that back in August of 1984 when she earned her 3 level as a personal specialist. And not only did General Best complete her 3 level training, she was also recognized as an honor graduate. General Best now joins an elite group of roughly 160 other people and is just the second female general officer recognized on the Wall of Achievers. She joins Brigadier General Jeannie Holm and reconnects the Air Force's first female general officer with Minnesota's first female officer. Recognition on the Wall of Achievers is much more than a general officer or an actor attaining an enlisted 3 skill level in the Air Force. It represents individuals making a difference in this world, making everything and everyone around them better, and General Best has done this at every step in her career. And tonight's recognition is a salute from the Air Force Enlisted Heritage Hall's Wall of Achievers to the accomplishments so far in her career. Please join me in congratulating General Best for being recognized on the Air Force Enlisted Heritage Hall's Wall of Achievers. General Best, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. It's quite an honor to have this recognition, but I want to let everybody know, first of all, that the 7 years that I served in enlisted really set the foundation for all of my success that has followed. And it also has really connected me to the backbone of the Air Force, our enlisted force. So all of you Civil Air Patrol cadets, Junior Rotc and Rotc cadets that are in the room, just always remember the enlisted force is the backbone of our service. They are the individuals that are going to help you be successful, because we don't get to any position in the military without our peers and our subordinates pushing and people above us pulling. So it is quite an honor to receive this recognition. One of the chiefs at the 133rd, or the chiefs, I'm not sure exactly, but a group of chiefs kind of researched this and told me about the recognition ahead of time. So thank you on behalf of the Minnesota National Guard Enlisted Force. Thank you.
Thank you, General Best, and congratulations. General Scotch, please come forward again for tonight's award presentation. Maybe that wasn't quite 10 minutes. Some of our awardees are unable to join us this evening, but if you are here, or if someone is accepting on your behalf, please come forward as I read your name. I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any of the names. First, we will recognize our Civil Air Patrol Group awardees. From the Crow Wing Composite Squadron, Cadet Captain Liam Richardson. Cadet Captain Richardson became a Civil Air Patrol cadet at the age of 12 with his focus on CAP's emergency services mission. He has attended and served as staff at several Minnesota wing trainings to achieve his goals, including encampment, advanced leadership course, ground team academy, Black Cap Emergency Services Academy. He earned CAP's prestigious Blue Beret and has worked to develop a unique training rotation for non-commissioned officers, which he calls the LEAD program, Leadership Excellence and Development, assuring his unit is training future leaders. From the Viking Composite Squadron, Lieutenant Colonel Jason Suby. Lieutenant Colonel Suby with us this evening? So, oh, there he is, good. Lieutenant Colonel Suby has been a member of the Civil Air Patrol since 2001. Since then, he has been steadfast in his support for aerospace education. Lieutenant Colonel Suby has been an enthusiastic supporter of Viking Composite Squadron's Cyber Patriot program and also lends his support to the Viking Squadron Color Guard team. Lieutenant Colonel Suby encourages enthusiasm for aerospace education by pursuing opportunities for the squadron to attend, such as Wings of the North Air Show and facility tours. From the St. Cloud Composite Squadron, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Dvorak. Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Dvorak has been a member of Civil Air Patrol since March 2011. Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Dvorak is a qualified flight line marshaller, group team member, and radio operator. Aerospace studies have been a focus of his CAP career as he has completed the CAP Aerospace Studies program and was one of only 8 cadets to receive a nationally sponsored flight scholarship. Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Dvorak maintains a 3.85 GPA and is an exemplary example of the type of cadet the youth program is intended to develop. Next, we will recognize our Air Force Junior ROTC awardees. Please come forward as I read your name. From Johnson High School, Cadet Captain Samina Yang. Cadet Captain Yang is recognized as one of the best leaders in the Minnesota 941 Air Force Junior ROTC program. She leads by example, cares for others, and gives 150% of her time and energy to the Air Force Junior ROTC program. She has built, trained, and leads an award-winning color guard team and is an amazing role model who motivates and inspires all cadets to excel. Congratulations. From North St. Paul High School, Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Katarina Arndt. Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Arndt is a 3-year member of the award-winning drill team. Over this past year, she has surrendered numerous morning and evening personal hours practicing with her team. As a senior cadet, she has taken an active role in recruiting new cadets in the North Junior ROTC program. Cadet Senior Master Sergeant Arndt has also taken on the task of upgrading the unit's display cases, highlighting opportunities offered to high school students who join Air Force Junior ROTC. From North Branch High School, Cadet Colonel Faith DeMars. Cadet Colonel DeMars is the cadet group commander, and her solid leadership has made a positive impact. She has commanded the color guard team and led them in 40 performances. Cadet Colonel DeMars was promoted to Operations Squadron Commander and recently to Cadet Group Commander, where she sets the standard of courtesy, initiative, judgment, and self-confidence for 65 cadets to follow. She exemplifies service to her community and nation as a member of the Marine Corps Delayed Enlistment Program and will enter active duty this July. From Park High School, Cadet Captain Jarrett Rose. Cadet Captain Rose performed flawlessly in numerous color guard details during this past school year. He exemplified service before self in taking over the duties of color guard commander when the current commander was unable. Cadet Rose is a great mentor to new cadets needing help in the classroom, and as drill commander, he oversaw the instruction of 10 new cadets to the Corps. From Woodbury High School, Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Patrick Roche. Cadet Lieutenant Colonel Roche has exceptional character and strong leadership skills and was therefore selected as the Cadet Corps Commander this school year. He is one of the top students in the program of 100 cadets and quick to volunteer his time, completing over 65 community service hours this year alone. The majority of Cadet Roche's classes are either honors or advanced placement classes where he maintains an impressive 3.83 GPA. Next are the Air Force ROTC Awards. From the University of St. Thomas, Air Force ROTC Detachment 410, Cadet Jessalyn Cox. Cadet Cox has been recognized on the Dean's List each semester of her college career, earning a stellar 4.0 cumulative GPA in mechanical engineering. She demonstrated superb professionalism while orchestrating a high-profile 24-hour prisoner of war and missing in action vigil that involved more than 100 joint service cadets. She earned distinguished graduate during field training, finishing in the top 10% of her class. From the University of Minnesota, Air Force ROTC Detachment 415, Cadet Randy Bilesick. Cadet Bilesick was recognized as number 1 of 13 cadets for Aerospace Studies 300, as well as a distinguished graduate during field training, where he also earned the Warrior Spirit Award. He maintains a 3.57 GPA, has twice received academic honors, and twice selected to the Dean's List. Next, we will recognize our Air National Guard awardees. Please come forward as I read your name. From the 133rd Airlift Wing, this year's Airman of the Year, Senior Airman Andrea Allen. Senior Airman Allen is a combat-proven C-130 loadmaster with 67 combat sorties, delivering 68 tons of cargo and 440 personnel to coalition forces. She achieved Air Expeditionary Force recognition as Airman of the Month and Airman of the Quarter. Senior Airman Allen mastered the Weapons School graduation exercise and was the first ever A1C selected for the Advanced Airlift Tactical Training Course. Senior Airman Allen is a community leader and delivered nearly 44,000 meals with Feed My Starving Children, plus 750 critical need meals to Open Arms Minnesota. The Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year, Technical Sergeant Michael Swenson. Accepting on his behalf is Chief Master Sergeant Steve Majorman. Tech Sergeant Swenson is a C-130 flight engineer instructor and has flown over 90 critical combat missions during 2 AEF deployment rotations. He was a key developer for off-station pre-AEF exercises, instructing 100-plus aircrew in hot weather and desert operations. He is a member of the 133rd Air Wing Contact Club Board, hosting official ceremonies, as well as Beyond Yellow Ribbon conference facilitator. The Senior Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year, Master Sergeant Christopher Milkey. Master Sergeant Milkey is a deployment operations superintendent and provided overall leadership of base security operations while deployed. He provided strategic direction for 144 personnel, encompassing 53 posts in a 24/7 operation, and mitigated more than 60 monthly perimeter intrusions. Master Sergeant Milky led outside the wire escort operations, managing 8 members on 139 missions. He completed senior enlisted joint professional military education, as well as achieving a 4.0 GPA in criminal justice while serving in a deployed location. First Sergeant of the Year, Senior Master Sergeant Ryan Fenton. Senior Master Sergeant Fenton is an outstanding Air Wing First Sergeant, serving over 250 airmen. He provided leadership across 5 separate units and was hand-selected for High Visibility Wing Command Chief COR. As a combat group SHIRT, he serves 7 diverse AEF squadrons, encompassing 425 members in geographically dispersed locations. He is a mentor beyond the 133rd and assisted in combining 133rd and 934th Air Wing's First Sergeant course. The Company Grade Officer of the Year, Captain Brian Tripp. Captain Tripp is a C-130 instructor navigator and was selected the 438th Expeditionary Wing Warrior of the Month while deployed to Afghanistan. He served as the Chief of Plans and Instructor Navigator for 15 U.S. and Coalition Tactical Air Advisors embedded with the Afghan Air Force. He expertly navigated a C-130 during an engine shutdown emergency with 71 Coalition and 6 German embassy staff on board, and was selected 438th Air Expeditionary Wing Company Grade Officer of the Board. Next, we will recognize our Air Force Reserve Command awardees. From the 934th Airlift Wing, this year's Outstanding Airman of the Year, Staff Sergeant Peter Simon. Staff Sergeant Simon is an aerospace medical technician. He has extensive critical knowledge and expertly instructed EMT and BLS courses, resulting in 76 certified students. Staff Sergeant Simon revamped the Wing AED program and eliminated expired equipment. He is a compassionate volunteer and organized a 45-member team to package over 22,000 meals for impoverished children in Haiti. Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year, Master Sergeant Justin Peterson. Accepting on his behalf is Major Mike Looney. Master Sergeant Peterson is an aircraft structural maintenance specialist. He directed 21 personnel and 1,600 maintenance accounts with a 100% quality assurance pass rate. He led a KC-135 wingtip refurbishment, ran a 3-man team for a damaged C-130 cargo ramp, and executed a Navy P-3 depot level repair. In addition, Master Sergeant Peterson dedicated over 20 hours to the Battle Buddy program to ease transition back to civilian life for 14 veterans returning from deployment. Senior Non-Commissioned Officer of the Year, Senior Master Sergeant Todd Rice. Accepting on his behalf is Senior Master Sergeant Jason Burkus. Senior Master Sergeant Rice is a Logistics Readiness Superintendent. He deployed 260 airmen, 21,700 man days to 16 locations with 0 mission impact deployment discrepancies. He filled an urgent Patriot Warrior need and redeployed 443 passengers and 470 short tons of cargo to meet schedule. He was selected to attend the Air Force Reserve Command Chiefs course in the Navy Senior Enlisted Academy, where he was selected to the Dean's List. First Sergeant of the Year, Master Sergeant Ryan Talbot. Master Sergeant Talbot is unable to join us this evening and will receive his award at a later date, but I'll read a short overview of his accomplishments. Master Sergeant Talbot is a highly involved Wing Senior NCO, recognized as the top 5% of 131 Air Wing E7s. He prepared 8 flight inspections, reviewing 150 airmen with less than 10 discrepancies. He advised the commander on discipline and compliance concerns to enforce a 100% 931st mission-ready status. The Company Grade Officer of the Year, Captain Danielle Greenhill. Captain Greenhill is a maintenance operations officer and led the squadron for 9 months immediately upon arrival, commanding a 130-person organization. She drove an 82% mission-capable rate, which is 7% above the reserve command goal, and was vital to the wing's 2,500 flying hours and 1,300 sorties. Captain Greenhill executed a $270,000 facility upgrade and oversaw $3 million aircraft parts and $2.7 million in operational budget. She volunteered 240 hours to Meals on Wheels and People Serving People. I just want to note, I had to shorten these up a lot. There was so much more than all of these awardees that I could have put on here, but we'd be here for about another 3 hours. So it's truly impressive what our awardees have done. As I stated earlier tonight, a core mission of the Air Force Association is to promote science, technology, engineering, and math to prepare students for future careers. This includes programs such as the already mentioned Cyber Patriot, as well as the space-oriented competition, Stellar Explorers. We have a number of outstanding local educators promoting STEM with an emphasis on aerospace. And for our final award this evening, we would like to take this opportunity to recognize one teacher in particular for the Air Force Association Rawlings Chapter, Krista McCullough Excellent in Teaching Award. Will Cindy Schreiber please come forward? AFA's Krista McCullough Excellence in Teaching Award recognizes Cindy Schreiber for demonstrated excellence in education in the spirit of Krista McCullough, sustained outstanding performance as an educator, and unequal dedication to ensuring that America's students are prepared for aerospace technological challenges of the future. Please join me again in congratulating Cindy Schreiber. Congratulations to all of our awardees this evening. One more round of applause. Before we end the evening, I would like to say a special thanks to those who worked so hard behind the scenes to make this event come together. Thank you to the photographers from the 133rd and 934th Airlift Wings. Thank you again to the St. Thomas Det 410 cadets for the color guard, choir, and POW MIA ceremony, as well as the University of Minnesota Det 415 cadets for manning the registration desk. Thank you to Bernie Scotch and Mac Macklund from our AFA National Headquarters for joining us from out of state tonight. Appreciate that. And thank you to those who sponsored cadet meals tonight, and a special thank you to Hubbard Broadcasting for making the event possible. And lastly, I would be remiss if we didn't thank the staff at the Town and Country Club for their excellent service and venue. Thank you very much. As we conclude tonight's event, we would like all of the awardees to come forward for a group photo with General Scotch. We have checks for the student awardees, so please make sure you see us before you leave. And finally, the Rawlings chapter will provide a 1-year AFA e-membership to all awardees. So please don't leave before that. This concludes tonight's program. Thank you again for coming, and have a good evening. So all the awardees, if you can come forward, we'll do some photos.
No way.
How are you doing?
Oh my god. I was like, I just was like,
Good. How are you doing?
and teach him how to put his hat
Sure.